Well, happy, beautiful, amazing evening. I'm going to take a moment and I'm just going to hand it off right away to my newest friend, Gene Diaz. Gene, are you ready?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can, loud and clear. Yes, sir.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. I was having some difficulties with my earbuds. I don't know. They decided to stop working today. Anyhow, well, thank you very much for the introduction, Dr. Bob. Hello, everyone. My name is Gene Diaz. As many of you know, I'm very happy, very excited to be here with all of you. Thank you for taking the time to visit on a Monday, start of the week. I know it's difficult to set up these things, but I'm very excited to talk to you about a great product that came into my lab a few months ago. As you know, my parents live in Merida, Yucatan, and my mom had some health issues with her knee. And discussing this with a couple of friends, they recommended to use the Ganoderma mushroom. And at that time, I was not even aware of what they were talking about. They started talking to me about this magnificent product that helps to heal and recover faster. So I said, well, let's give it a try. So my friend gave me some red tea and green teas and also some spores, Ganoderma spores. And I brought it to my mom and I started giving them to her. And within a week or so, she started feeling better. We don't know what happened. Like, honestly, I was surprised myself. But that told me something, that we were in front of something really, really interesting. So I started investigating a little bit furthermore, and I started to connect with my friend. She referred me with another friend, with Mariola, and she spoke about the benefits of the product. So I started doing my own research, and I don't know if that ever happened to you, that you come across to a nice restaurant with great food and very good pricing, and you want to share this experience with your friends and family. But this is what happened with the Ganoderma and this company. I feel with the obligation to share this experience with all of you. So I start using the product myself, and I'm giving this product to my family. And I'm very enthusiastic about the good testimonials that I have heard. And that's what I decided to share this with all my friends and family. So Mariola and then Diane introduced me to Dr. Bob. Dr. Bob is a great person. I'm really, really grateful for him to give us the opportunity to talk today. I want to introduce Dr. Bob. Robert Rakowski is a chiropractor. He's a board certified kinestologist, a certified clinical nutritionist, a certified biological terrain instructor, and the clinic director of the Natural Medicine Center in Houston, Texas. In addition to running a busy practice, Dr. Rakowski has lectured internationally for over 29 years on various topics related to natural and lifestyle medicine, happiness, and success. He has appeared on numerous television programs and international radio talk shows, and he's a recognized expert in functional endocrinology and in office diagnostic procedures to assess nutrition status. His clinical experience ranges from treating elite sport figures and well, has a vast experience in the matter. So with that said, I'd like to introduce Dr. Bob Rakowski. Thank you very much for the opportunity to discuss. If you have any questions, I know you will have tons of questions for us. You can write it on the text on the Zoom chat, and I will try to answer all those questions together with Dr. Bob. And if we don't answer all the questions today, feel free to reach me directly, and we will find the right question for you. Well, having said that, Dr. Bob, the stage is yours.
All right, Gene. Well, thank you for that. It's fascinating over time when you really have a passion for helping people, what the world can bring you. And I've been blessed to have worked with world champions from every major professional sport. One of my favorite stories is Tyson Gay. A few weeks after I treated him, he beat Usain Bolt straight up in the 100 meters. And he signed $1 million endorsement even before his sweat had dried. But a part of my passion, a huge part of it, is teaching. So I've actually been all over the world, and it's pretty fascinating. I think this was in Mexico. and they listed my name as Roberto Rakowski. So I think I went backstage and I basically said, "Mi nombre es Roberto," because that's about as much Spanish as I know. And then, you know, they actually changed my name for the banner on the screen. A lot of brain press lately, and Simone Biles got some of it when she decided to withdraw from the Olympics, you know, the greatest gymnast of all time. And she said basically because of mental health. And, you know, if you look deeper into the circumstance, she was taking drugs to help her focus, and it was against the Japanese rules. She couldn't do it in Japan. And imagine if you suddenly become dependent upon a brain drug, and you need full focus and concentration. If you look at how she moves her body, I think that was a very smart decision because she was risking her life if she didn't have focus there. It's interesting that you look at the top fear before the age of 55, it's cancer. But after the age of 55, it's actually Alzheimer's. It's a big shift there. So people do not want to outlive the functioning of their brain. And here's an interesting graph of the projections of Alzheimer's. And I tend to look at graphs when they go up vertically. And so I just turn that graph on its end, and you can see that they're expecting dramatic increases in Alzheimer's. So about 8 years ago, I was a major lecturer at a conference where this gentleman started to present his data. That's Dr. Dale Bredesen. And he wrote the book, The End of Alzheimer's. And basically, what the subtitle of that is, it's the first program to prevent, notice, and reverse cognitive decline. So at this point, they have thousands of cases of Alzheimer's that have been reversed. And he used the analogy that, you know, imagine you had a ceiling that had 36 holes in it, and those are the 36 different things that are associated with Alzheimer's. But they all go into three major categories: toxicity, inflammatory process, and a decline in nerve growth factors. And we're going to talk about a nerve that manages all of those things really, really, really beautifully. And I even add one more: inactivity, because we're going to find out that movement is important for all types of health, and including brain health. So the things that really get us in trouble are stress. Think about how stressful this last year has been for a lot of people. Toxins, over 80,000 registered toxic chemicals in the environment. Malnutrition, the Global Nutrition Report says malnutrition affects every country on planet Earth, and it was the #1 cause of death in 2020. And then inactivity is also a problem. I like to share a lot of good information, so I'm going to play a video first, and this is pretty fascinating. Oh, I got to turn the volume up.
But Dr. Antonio Chioca at Ohio State University Medical Center talks to his patients during surgery, and they talk right back. Count to 10, okay? Chioca's removing a tumor from this patient and needs to know exactly how much tissue he can cut. The person in the OR that day was Amy Norris. Within 48 hours of her surgery, she was back home and back to playing her violin, something she still remembers how to do, even though she hasn't done it in years.
Oh, I just think it's amazing. You know, I know 10 years ago they wouldn't have been able to do that. You know, and it just amazes me that Dr. Chioca has that ability.
Just by talking to Amy.
Are we supposed to see the video?
Are you not seeing the video?
No,
Oh,
I'm
boy.
just hearing the audio. Sorry.
Well, you know, then I'm going to just go right past that. So can you see my screen now?
Yes, yeah, we can see.
Okay. You know what? Sometimes Zoom is funny that way. I was actually of an individual that was having brain surgery while she was awake. And the point is, the brain does not feel pain. So when the brain has a problem, you see things as brain function changes, especially mood, typically anxiety, depression, and then it can ultimately be memory loss. So I tell people, I've also seen the other end of the spectrum. I've seen people that were sent home to die. And this was a diabetic foot that was actually given a death sentence. So 2 days from the day this picture was taken, they were actually going to amputate that foot. They were going to cut it off mid-foot. But look at the foot 2 weeks later. And part of what we did was Ganoderma every waking hour for those 2 weeks. And then look at it 17 months later. And that's a very fantastic progression. So now I'm going to make the bridge to the brain. So what Dr. Bredesen teaches is that whenever there's a brain problem, there are three distinct zones of cells. There are cells that are dead. Well, there's nothing we can do about that. There are cells that are fine. There's nothing we need to do about that. But in between are cells that are functional but not functioning. And if we can bring back function, well, amazingly, we can actually get back function. So we look at this foot, it was given a death sentence. And as I look at it, there's cells that are dead. There's nothing I could do about that. So she never had surgery. The toes actually just fell off. But look at how much healthier the foot was in 2 weeks. And this change in the foot was not just her foot, that was the rest of her body. And there's a very important link between diabetes and Alzheimer's, which I'll show in a moment. But I was giving a health talk about 5 years ago, and this woman's daughter happened to be in the audience. And she said, oh my gosh, my mother is in assisted living. She's in a wheelchair because she already had one leg amputated due to diabetes. And they think they might have to start amputating the other leg. Do you think this could help? And I answer that question the same every time. I don't know if it'll help, but it sure won't hurt. So why don't you give it a shot? Well, what's so amazing is the infection completely resolved after 2 weeks. But shortly after that, her daughter went to go visit her, which she often did. But this time when she walked in the room, Donna Mae looked at her and said, well, hi, Jolene. And Jolene said, Mom. And she said, yes, how are you? Well, what was so surprising about that is at that point, Donna Mae did not even know prior to that her daughter's name for the last 2 years. So at 3 months with Ganoderma, her dementia had gone into complete remission. The doctors fully acknowledged that, and they also saved the leg. So here's the link. You can all find this on the internet. They are actually calling Alzheimer's a type 3 diabetes of the brain. And so we certainly want to keep blood sugar regulation doing well. Gene introduced the term Ganoderma, and I encourage people to look at pubmed.gov and type in Ganoderma. But there's 120 studies showing that Ganoderma is really good for diabetes. And notice what this says, preventive and therapeutic effect on Ganoderma for diabetes, 120 different studies. So this will be a unique study. STZ was a drug they used to use for pancreatic cancer until they realized that they killed the cells of the pancreas that made insulin. So they'd give these individuals 1 dose of the drug and they'd instantly make them a type 1 diabetic. So ultimately, they tried giving that drug and Ganoderma. And I encourage people, if you actually want to know the facts, you can screenshot this, type this PubMed ID into your Google search engine, and you can take and read the exact article if that interests you. But when they gave animals this drug that would always kill the cells of the pancreas, Ganoderma was able to protect the pancreas from the toxicity, and the animals did not develop type 1 diabetes. And what they also found was that that same drug would cause Alzheimer's. But notice what this says, Ganoderma prevents learning and memory deficits in this type of Alzheimer's. And again, I always encourage people, if you wanted to actually know the data, feel free to look up the study. I like psychiatrist Daniel Amen, and he wrote a book called The End of Mental Illness. He also has a TED Talk entitled What I Learned After 83,000 Brain Scans. But here's what he's determined after actually looking at the brain. In his TED Talk, he said psychiatrists were the only medical professionals that didn't actually examine the organ that they were treating. But new brain scans make that possible. And he came to the conclusion that brain health and mental health are very tightly related. So I've told people for years, the brain is the most nutrient dependent, energy dependent, stress vulnerable, and toxin vulnerable organ in the body. And there's a couple 100,000 medical studies that support that information. And I just, let people know, look, when I actually am used to teaching doctors, they always want the proof. So I always tend to provide it. So here's what he learned after 83,000 brain scans. You can change people's brains. And when you change them for the better, the brain gets better. One of the worst things for the brain is stress, especially prolonged stress. So I want you to think about how this last year has been for a lot of people. And it's been stressful in more ways than many people can even imagine. And what happens quite simply is you start changing the blood flow to your brain. So when you're in a relaxed state, your brain is, nourished by blood and oxygen and nutrients. But when your brain is stressed, your body gets into a fight or flight mode that actually triggers anxiety. And it also shuts off the higher centers of the brain. So you can't think straight. It also shuts off the joy centers. And so we definitely don't want to run our brains on chronic stress. And if it goes on long enough, here's what we know: it actually shrinks the brain, and especially the section of the brain associated with memory. And that's what causes Alzheimer's. So notice what it says: high cortisol levels, that's the stress hormone, are associated with cognitive impairment and dementia. So that section of the brain is memory, severely shrinks. So fascinatingly enough, I've recommended what I call a stress reset now for about a decade, and it's one of the most powerful interventions that I do in my clinic. I give people melatonin, theanine, and Ganoderma, and here's what I tell them. Melatonin calms the body. You might think of it as your sleep hormone, but when you take it orally, it calms and relaxes the body. Theanine is an amino acid in green tea. It calms the mind. And then when we talk about Ganoderma, the medical literature literally says it calms the body, the mind, and the spirit. They call it the herb of spiritual potency. And think about that. If your body's more calm, if your mind is more calm, it would make sense that it'd be a little easier to pursue the spiritual aspects of life. When we look at malnutrition, here's a fact. In 2020, malnutrition was the leading cause of death, and it has been for quite some time now. And many doctors, including myself, before the pandemic ever started, said, look, what we really need to do is focus on getting healthy, focus on nutrition, focus on stress management, focus on exercise, minimize the amount of toxins that we're exposed to. But here's what the Global Nutrition Report says: every single country on planet Earth is affected by malnutrition. So very, very fortunately, we have fewer and fewer starving children. That's definitely a blessing, but we have an increasingly starved population. People are eating food that has less and less nutrient value. And so what happens is, since they don't get the nutrients that they need, they continue to be hungry. And so they keep eating. And guess what? If you keep eating, you keep gaining weight. And as people gain weight, their brain actually shrinks. Now, I know that may seem hard to imagine, but you can go ahead and look at this article. I typed in the PubMed right there. Does the brain shrink as the waist expands? And the overwhelming conclusion is absolutely yes. And it's especially bad, notice, for cognitive performance, especially executive function or high-level decision-making. And so, I've said things for years: friends don't let friends become diabetic, friends don't let friends become obese. And the great news is that Ganoderma is wonderfully anti-diabetic, over 120 studies, and it also is very preventive for obesity. When we look at Ganoderma and fat loss, it's wonderful for satiety. People might notice they drink a cup of coffee and they feel good for several hours. We also have shakes that are really good. On our own team, we had an individual lose over 100 pounds switching to a shake, 2 shakes a day. It also prevents the absorption of bad fats. Believe it or not, in an animal study, they gave animals the standard American diet. But when they gave them the standard American diet, which is known as the sickest diet on the planet, they absorbed less toxins from their foods. It enhances insulin signaling. It actually speeds up metabolism and thermogenesis. And it changes the bugs in the gut. And I'm going to even talk about that a little bit more later. But I'm going to share a little bit of Nobel Prize winning research. So this researcher started studying a process called autophagy. That's how you pronounce that word. And they found out that this is one of the secrets to longevity of the body and of the brain. And ultimately, what he said was that when you have autophagy, you get rid of these things called neurofibrillary tangles and amyloid. And these are things that induce Alzheimer's changes in the brain. So when we look at things that are good for autophagy, a healthy lifestyle, healthy metabolism, a healthy brain, it's anti-cancer and pro-heart. These are actually the benefits of autophagy. So you'll live better longer with a better brain, heart, immune system, etc. And the way you get after it, it says fasting. So I'll share with you, intermittent fasting is a really good idea. Exercise. Coffee itself is good for autophagy. Ganoderma, I'll show, has a number of studies showing that it's really good for autophagy. So we can get Ganoderma coffee, Ganoderma supplements, and then a ketogenic diet. So Ganoderma and autophagy, 23 different studies. And notice the first one says that it's actually good at presenting Parkinson's, and I'm gonna get to that later. When it comes to intermittent fasting, this is something that I think we all should do. I've done this for the last handful of years, and I think it's absolutely one of the best ways to stay lean, stay healthy, stay sharp. And the basics are you start eating later and you quit eating earlier. So notice what they have the first 6 hours of the day, coffee and water. Notice the last 6 hours of the day, tea and water. Well, we've got Ganoderma infused coffee and tea. That's going to improve satiety, metabolism, everything else. And notice they even have coffee in the middle of the day because it is so good, especially ours for people. So when people do calorie restriction, which means you just eat fewer calories, simple enough, that keeps the brain younger, longer. When I teach weight management, I always tell people, you know, we've all heard the phrase little old lady, little old man. We don't hear the phrase big old lady, big old man, because if, you know, big people rarely get to be old, but if they do, they usually spend their last decade, maybe even 20 years with a major medical disability. So there are those terms, amyloid beta neurofibrillary tangles. That's what happens when there's neuroinflammation. So this gentleman, Mike Webster, was featured in a movie called Concussion. He played 18 NFL seasons, won 4 Super Bowls, earned millions of dollars, but he died young, 50-something years old. And for the last couple of years, he didn't even know his name. And when they did a brain autopsy, they actually found out that that's what his brain looked like, and that's what it should have looked like. So here's what we know. Ganoderma decreases inflammation, swelling, and neuron degeneration after a head or brain trauma. So I have a patient that had a severe head trauma that he wasn't supposed to survive. They life flighted him. They called his family into the intensive care unit, and they told his kids, say goodbye to your dad. He's not going to live through the night. Well, I've got a video of Michael Morris who said 21 days later, he felt good enough to actually jog home from the hospital and reestablish full physical and mental capacity very, very fast when he wasn't even supposed to survive. And he associates a lot of that with his consistent use of Ganoderma. And it's a very, very powerful anti-inflammatory. So what I tell people is that chronic inflammation is associated with every chronic disease. So think about that. If you can reduce the chronic inflammatory process, can you potentially help any chronic disease? And the answer is you can. It can potentially happen. This PubMed study shows that Ganoderma spores, specifically, that's what they studied in that article, can prevent Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. Those are the biggest fears as people age. And it dissolves amyloid plaque and improves brain circulation in Alzheimer's. This, by the way, is amyloid, and that is a dying nerve cell. So pretty fascinating study here. They gave rats a concussion. One group was given Ganoderma and other support nutrients. The other group was given no treatment at all. And at 21 days, they actually, sacrificed the animals and wanted to study the brains. And you can see probably 95+% reduction in amyloid plaque. And that's just at 21 days. No reason to stop at 21 days. Lots of studies on Ganoderma in the brain. It's known to improve serotonin, which is happiness, GABA, which is for calmness, acetylcholine, which is for memory, and dopamine has different functions in different parts of the brain. One part is for focus, another part is for intense joy. And the third part is for fine motor control, meaning it prevents Parkinson's. It also induces brain stem cells. It's anti-Parkinson's, anti-Alzheimer's, and even anti-seizure. And it's fascinating. I've had some seizure patients where their seizures have gone into remission and they're off of their medications because they take Ganoderma. One thing that's gotten a lot of press lately is the microbiome. And here's what we know. As people get older, their bugs in their gut change. That often leads to gut problems and can cause problems with the brain, including dementia. Now, that's actually a 2021 study, so fairly recent. And what I can tell you is, like all living organisms, bugs in our gut eat, drink, and go to the bathroom. We have far more bugs in our gut than we have cells in our body. So just for the fun of it, I looked it up. The microbiome started being studied in 2015. 40 different studies on Ganoderma and the microbiome. Notice the first one, it says it actually reduces obesity. The next, it enhances the immune system. And the third one that came up in that study shows that it basically can be good at reversing type 2 diabetic rats. So very powerful there. There's a book entitled 10% Human. And that really refers to the DNA in our bodies. We're actually 90% bug DNA and 10% human DNA. So it makes sense that we want to maximize the good bugs in our gut. So it's fascinating that over the last decade, they also found out that gut bugs, the wrong ones, can make you fat. So here, this was at first, I thought, the strangest study that I ever read. They had two identical human twins. One became obese, the other stayed lean. They did a fecal transplant. They took feces from the backside of the obese twin and they put it in the backside of an identical twin mouse. They did the same with feces from a lean twin. And on the exact same diet, the exact same quantity, the exact same quality, they actually created this mouse, the obese mouse, the one that had the obese microbiome, got a lot more calories from their food. And so fascinatingly enough, this is one of again, 6 mechanisms by which Ganoderma produces fat loss. You wouldn't have to have a fecal transplant. And again, 40 different studies talking about reducing obesity, helping the immune system, and reversing type 2 diabetes. When we look at toxins, this is a very strange case. They call it the case of the frozen addicts. So this was a group of drug abusers in Southern California in the early 1980s. They injected a synthetic heroin called MPTP, and they all woke up the next day with Parkinson's disease. Well, the doctor said, you know what, that's a real bummer for them, but now we have something where we can actually study Parkinson's disease. So it took them until 2018 to actually study MPTP with Ganoderma. And notice what it says. Ganoderma lucidum extract ameliorates or makes better MPTP-induced Parkinsonism, and that wonderful term autophagy again. So if people want to look at that, this was known to cause Parkinson's in a single dose in 100% of the animals, but when they gave them Ganoderma, Ganoderma protected them. I also showed where it protects the brain against Alzheimer's from STZ. And for the fun of it, the primary organ of detoxification is the liver. And this medical study shows the many things that Ganoderma is good for, including liver cancer, hepatitis B, and toxicant-induced liver injury, just to name a few. Finally, I want to give a little shout out to exercise. We know that exercise is really good for the body at every age, and people that exercise the most keep their brains young longest. And so I happen to like this YouTube video, this 90-year-old dancer just going out there and absolutely having a great time. But now the technical side of that, Ganoderma improves, this says mitochondrial electron transport complexes. Those are just big words that mean mitochondria make 94.4% of human energy. And when you enhance our primary energy production capacity, you quite simply get more energy. And we already talked about inflammation. Pain and fatigue are the top two reasons that people don't exercise. Ganoderma is great for both pain and fatigue. Finally, there's also access to a technology called NeuroTracker. NeuroTracker has been around for over 20 years, over 50 medical studies, and basically it helps brain function, whether we're talking about little kids or senior citizens with dementia. And the reason that NeuroTracker is available to everybody here is because they actually partnered with our Ganoderma company, because the scientists there found out, wow, Ganoderma works really good for the brain. So does NeuroTracker. And together they create a better brain much faster. In fact, they've done a study now, 130% better brain function over 90 minutes. Just a couple testimonials, then we'll go to questions. Paul Stamets is considered the world's foremost authority on medicinal mushrooms. He was interviewed by Joe Rogan, who's got the most popular podcast, and notice the title there, Mushrooms Cured His Stutter. Now, I don't know how often that happens, but this gentleman, Sachin Patel, is on our team, and he talks about how just 4 days of a healthier hot chocolate and one of his colleagues' very, very severe stutter completely resolved. And here's a testimonial about an autistic kid who also got better just drinking hot chocolate. So, you know, we have many such testimonials, but at this point, what I'd love to do is go to questions. So,
that's
any
fantastic,
questions
Dr.
in the
Bob.
chat
Yeah.
box? Or does anybody want to?
No, nobody has made a question, but feel free to raise your hand. We will mute you to ask any questions you might have. I know that there might be there's too much information right now that you're processing, right? And you're not drinking Ganoderma, so probably it takes a little bit longer to process that.
You know, so Gene, one thing I want to do is come back and simplify it. Whether you have problems with weight, Ganoderma helps. If you have problems with diabetes, Ganoderma helps. If you have problems with energy and inflammation, Ganoderma helps. If you have problems with your brain, Ganoderma helps. And the audiences that I'm used to lecturing to, they don't want my opinion. They want published medical facts. And that's why I share those studies like I do. But any question is a good question. So if you have one, please ask.
No, I'm going to ask the first question.
Sure.
For example, if I have my dad, for example, if he starts losing memory, he's in the first stages of losing memory. I'm really concerned that eventually this progresses and gets really, really bad. If I were to give him the coffee or the tea or the supplement like the capsules, what would be like a good protocol to start? Like what would be a good way to start, and how can we measure? And how fast can we measure any results?
Well, I think we can see fast results. So one of the best ways to measure it is actually with the technology called NeuroTracker. And you can buy a family unit of that. NeuroTracker used to be used by professional sports teams. Then it went to the military, then went to big business. There's brain clinics that charge $100 a session for NeuroTracker. You can get a family membership for NeuroTracker, 4 users for $500 a year, unlimited sessions. So what we know is that if we get them consuming Ganoderma products and doing NeuroTracker, we can measure and quantify how much his brain is improved. And what they've seen over their 20 years and 53 published studies is it's a better brain guaranteed in 90 minutes. And again, Ganoderma plus NeuroTracker, 130% better improvement is what they've seen over baseline. So we would expect to see some results in 90 minutes of training. But I do tell people, bodies respond to frequency, duration, intensity, quality, and timing of stimuli. So when I give people 2 spores every waking hour for 7 to 10 days, that's where I see the absolute fastest changes. And it can be life enhancing for many.
Good. Carlos has a question. He says, does Ganoderma help with FTD patient, or an FTD patient?
So I might have to look up that FTD acronym.
Yes. Hi, doctor. My name is Carlos. I'm Jane's friend. I'm up here in Canada. Nice to meet you. Very good presentation, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, just a quick question. My mom was also diagnosed with frontotemporal dementia, right?
Ah, okay.
So she, after several studies, MRIs, and several doctors' points of view, she's 82 years old. She was diagnosed with that, and it's been very sad family-wise environment because her progress has been in a very uh, speedy way on the negative side, right? So at this point, her behavior, her attitude, and her language has been so reduced to a very minimum interaction with the family overall. So we have tried different uh, alternatives, let's say, but as you know, this is dementia goes in a very progressive way. She has also diabetes and high pressure. So after talking with Jean yesterday, I'm very excited about trying this product and see how soon my mom can have a better quality of life, right?
Sure. Well, the reason I show this foot is because it makes a very good point. So imagine that this is currently what her brain is like now. Now, she had no function in the foot, no feeling in the foot, and they said it's as good as dead. We're going to cut it off. But then look at what we were able to achieve in 2 weeks. By the way, this was due to diabetes, and that patient is a 45-year-old female. So that kind of turnaround is beyond amazing. My standard answer is can it help? I'll answer it exactly the same. I don't know if it'll help, but it certainly won't hurt. And so the cells that are functional but not functioning, we didn't talk about Ganoderma and blood pressure, but it works very, very well for blood pressure. It contains, it increases a molecule in the body called nitric oxide. Nitric oxide dilates blood vessels. That was Nobel Prize winning research. So we're gonna get more oxygen and nutrients to the brain. We're gonna clear out the inflammatory process. We're actually gonna help with blood sugar regulation. And in theory, start to reduce her blood pressure as well. And those, overall should be very, very positive for her. We just hope we're doing enough early enough to get a significant turnaround so that she can enjoy some more good time.
Okay. Thanks for responding my question. Right? Thank you. So
you are very welcome.
There's another question here. It says, after the 10-day detox program, how long should I take the spores?
Well, everybody's going to be different. So if someone's healthy, happy, balanced, most people can stay that way with just their regular coffee and tea habit. Now, I'm going to assume because the average person in North America drinks 3.3 cups of coffee a day, you're going to get 3.3 really good doses a day. And for most people, that's more than enough. And if you want the turbocharged version, the king of coffee is going to have the strongest benefit, or the green tea. So for most people, that'll be enough. But I tell people it's easier to stay out of trouble than get out of trouble. So if someone has significant health challenges, I would supplement more than coffee and tea until those challenges go away. So interestingly enough, I've got a picture on my computer I could access, but we had a guy that lost 100 pounds in 10 months. And it's amazing how so many things get better as that excess weight goes away. So I'd encourage people, be as healthy as possible, and then maintain it with just healthier habits, healthier choices. Oh, you're muted, Gene.
Another question will be, what would be the best way to give the product or the Ganoderma to a patient that is refusing to take any medicine, but it's over 90 years of age?
Yeah, well, a really nice cup of coffee or tea. Just make them a good cup of coffee. We've had plenty of people where it's pretty fascinating. If you tell them something's healthy, they are reluctant to take it, but these same people will drink a Coca-Cola or whatever cerveza they like, but we've had men tend to be more resistant than women. I've had plenty of women, they make their husband a cup of coffee in the morning and they just realize, wow, this is really good coffee. And that's easy to switch them over. They don't even know, they just know they feel better and they get better too. So coffee and tea is really genius. It's a genius way to share.
Another question is, how can you integrate Ganoderma with traditional medication? I
So
believe
there
it comes the interaction, maybe.
Sure. Well, so there's no known drug interaction, no known toxicity. So, you look and we're operational, the company Organo, in 38 countries, and not one of our boxes of coffee or tea have a warning label on them at all. So it doesn't say if you're taking blood pressure medication, if you're taking seizure medication, if you're taking anti-anxiety medication, none of those warnings exist. So you've had lawyers from all these countries look at it and say, yeah, there's nothing to worry about. And so, just imagine the healthiest meal you've ever seen. Would any doctor ever caution you about that? And the answer is no. And that's what 38 different countries have agreed to as well for our coffee and tea. It's just got the healthiest nutrient, safest nutrient, and probably the most effective nutrient combination on the planet, all in one package.
Another question here saying, additional to the tea and coffee, is there any other presentation that we can take the Ganoderma?
Yeah, there's capsules. So occasionally you'll have some people that don't drink coffee or tea. And when I tell people, when people want to change fast, when I have them take 2 every waking hour, I don't tell them to drink 2 cups of coffee or tea every waking hour, but they can take 2 capsules. And so there's 3 different capsules. One is called the mycelium. That's pretty good for brain focus and concentration. There's what's called the Ganoderma lucidum. That has all of the nutrients, all the fabulous 50, all the vitamins, minerals, amino acids, proteins, carbohydrates, fat, fiber, and water in doses that make a difference to human health. And then there are the spores, and the spores have some of the components 75 times more concentrated than what you get in the Ganoderma lucidum or mycelium. So the spores are easily the strongest. They're a little more expensive, but I believe they're worth it.
Okay. Well, I don't see any further questions. Somebody wants to ask anything else. I would like to add that this is not a medicine. This is not something that is going to fix you by any means, but it's going to make or create the conditions. But if you are taking a medicine already, it will be more efficient. I like to see this, the Ganoderma will create a balance inside ourselves. And if we are taking another medication, you don't stop taking that medication, but most likely the effects, the absorption of the medication will be better if you're taking the Ganoderma.
Gene,
yeah.
Now, I've used Ganoderma all 30 years in clinical practice. And here's what I can tell you, people will call me and after a few weeks, they'll say, hey, I noticed that my blood pressure is really low. What about my medication? I'll say, call the doctor that prescribed it and tell them your numbers. And they check their numbers every day and they say, yeah, my pressure was 105/70 today. And the doctor usually says, well, cut your medication in half and then, call me back in 5 days and let me know how it goes. And guess what? What tends to happen is a lot of times people are able to stop blood pressure medication, stop diabetes medication. And often those medications are very expensive and they, they can have some negative effects to them.
I guess nobody has asked the question, but how expensive is this Ganoderma? Because I guess it's something that was one of my first questions.
Yeah, well, it's a great question. So, imagine that if you get a black coffee, you get it for $1 a cup with a therapeutic dose of Ganoderma. Now there's the king of coffee, the premium with the spores, that's going to be a couple dollars a cup. Then you start looking at the latte, $2 a cup, mocha, $3 a cup. And what I find very, very fascinating is I didn't sell any of the products that had sugar in my clinic. I have a coffee bar in my clinic. And about 10 years ago, I had a woman come in and she was top 10 in the world in tennis for women over the age of 50. And she had a giant Starbucks mocha. And I looked at her and I said, my gosh, what is that? She says, oh, I'm addicted. I'm sorry. I need this. And I said, well, how often do you drink those? She said, I probably drink 10 of those a week. And I said, you've got to be kidding me. I said, would you like to try a better option? She said, I'll try anything once. So I literally had a box of mocha in the back room. It came in a product package that I bought, but I wasn't going to sell it. I wasn't going to drink it. I didn't look at the nutrition comparison. I found out later that ours has 1/3 the sugar, 1/2 the calories, and a megadose of Ganoderma. So I made her a mocha, and she took one sip and she looked at me and she said, well, that can't be healthy. And I said, why do you say that? She said, it just tastes too good. Well, fast forward 10 years, she is still a mocha customer and made that transition. But the week of Thanksgiving, she lost 4 pounds. And that's usually a week that people gain 5 or more pounds. So she was very excited. And the health benefits are clearly there. So I was lecturing in Toronto, and the gentleman that gave that testimonial about his client with the son with stutters, we were at a seminar, and he said, well, Dr. Bob, I decided I'm gonna put this to the test. He says, I want someone in the audience to volunteer to actually put on a continuous blood sugar monitor and drink a mocha. Well, the person that volunteered was a healthy 35-year-old male, but he drank the mocha, and over the course of 2 hours, his blood sugar didn't even go up a point. And I was amazed. We had a coffee table in back, and we had mocha samples. The doctors rushed the back table, and they couldn't wait for mocha. They realized, wow, if this is blood sugar friendly, I want some. And so what I tell my patients in my clinic, if you want to lose weight, if you're diabetic, then we should probably avoid sugar. But if you want to test it, come in, we'll test your blood sugar, drink the mocha, we'll test your blood sugar 45 minutes later. And so far, everybody that I've tested it on, and it's now a number of years that I've done that, it raises the average person's blood sugar about the same amount as broccoli and chicken. And that even includes people on insulin. So suddenly, people can have a treat that they really enjoy and get healthier.
I have another question here. It says, in the case of my mom, she has Alzheimer's. It's well advanced. She's 81 years old. And on top of that, she has some hypertension and diabetes. Is that worth trying this product, like the Ganoderma, maybe the spores or the teas? Is that going to make any good to her? Is there a way that, probably the question is go beyond that, like, is she going to get better after that?
Well, I never know. When people ask that, when I give a report of findings to any patient, they always ask, they want to know if I can help. And I always say, I don't know, but I'll try. But, the evidence is that if there's a chance to get better, this makes the chance a lot better. And what I also start telling people is, there's a lot of advances in stem cells, and we know that Ganoderma induces stem cells. I showed the publication there. And so brain stem cells are very, very important. And who knows, maybe we'll even make an advance in medical technology where they can do some direct stem cell infusion to the brain. And here's what we know. If we keep people around longer, healthier, they have a better chance of being around when these advances are made. So I would certainly do it. One way or the other, you should notice something's getting better, even if it's not the thing that you're most interested in.
The follow-up question for that is, where can we buy this? Canada, US? Well, obviously, it's also available in Mexico.
Yeah.
There's a situation with the spores, with the capsules, that currently distribution is limited in Mexico. But I've been told by Mariola and by Diane that there's a possibility to make those products available through a network of doctors that we have within Mexico. So it's available in Mexico, US, Canada, and 30-something more countries around the world. Another question is, can you give this product to children?
Oh, absolutely. And in fact, certainly the capsules are really good, but that's why the hot cocoa was created. And they also have a vanilla shake and a chocolate shake. And so in the States and probably in Canada and probably in Mexico, they have a lot of problems with what they call attention deficit disorder. And so one of my chiropractor colleagues had a family with 2 daughters. They were both 11 years old, and they both had extreme attention deficit disorder. So they would take drugs before they'd go to school, just so that they could concentrate and make it through the school day. Well, they decided, all right, since we have identical twins, let's do a twin study. So they gave one twin the hot chocolate with Ganoderma. They gave the other twin the medication. And what's fascinating about that is the week later, they had a parent-teacher conference. And the teacher just very specifically asked, tell me what you're doing different with Sally. And Sally was the one that gave the hot chocolate. And the parents were a little worried. They said, well, why do you ask? And they said, oh my gosh, she's a brand new person. She's so interactive. She's so bright. She's so happy. She's a new child. Whatever you're doing, keep doing. You know, and then the parents told them, well, guess what? We pulled her off the drugs and we put her on a healthy hot chocolate. And the teacher was beyond amazed. And, you know, I don't know why every student in the whole world isn't doing this, because it's so good for the brain and body. And it's certainly better, you know, than anything that in the long run can create toxicity or even addiction. Oh, Gene, you're muted again.
Sorry about that. No questions here. Anybody else wants to ask, raise your hand. Maybe follow-up question or just a wrap up. Do you have any additional questions later on? Oh, Anthony was about to raise his hand.
Yeah. Hey, Dr. Bob, how are you?
I'm epic. Happy, beautiful evening.
To you too. No, I don't really have a question. I just want to bear witness to what you're saying and stuff, because I've been using it and controlling my blood sugar and blood pressure without having to take any other outside medication. So it has really helped out. And if I happen to go a while without it, I notice the difference quite a bit. So Gabby keeps me on a strict routine. So
Hi, Dr. Bob.
Happy, beautiful evening. Well, you've got an amazing wife. Everybody that knows Gabby loves Gabby. She is fantastic. So, and I'm excited for her too.
Thank you, Dr. Bob.
okay. No, that's all I had to say. I didn't particularly have a question, but it is, this stuff does work. So
thank you.
Thank you. Great testimonial, and we appreciate that. If anybody of you have further questions later on, you can reach me, you can text me, you have all my contact information, and I will take these questions to Dr. Bob, and we will try to find the best answer for you. I really appreciate you taking the time, Dr. Bob. It was amazing presentation and lots of information. Thank you again for your help, your support. Great wingman here. And well, thank you everybody else for joining in this meeting. Hopefully we have upcoming meetings for another subjects. I know there's a meeting tomorrow night as well, Dr. Bob. Maybe you can give us an advance.
Yeah, interesting. So every Tuesday I do something called Ask the Doctor, and it's 6 p.m. Central Standard Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And you know, you picked a perfect topic for tonight because people ask me, Bob, would you do brain health? So interestingly enough, tomorrow will be brain health. I'll probably have something similar, but you know, you might think of some questions between now and then. I would encourage you to be on, and if you have family or friends that have questions, I'm always happy to answer them.
Yeah, if anybody's interested in joining these meetings, I can sign you, make you to join the group on Facebook, so you can watch the presentations through Facebook Live. And any questions, feel free to reach me and contact me. I will be very happy to help. This is what drives me, and I want to bring this product to everybody that can benefit from it. So thank you again, and that's it. That's all.
All right. Well, thank you all. Good night, all, and God bless.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Dr. Bob, have a good night.
You too.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. You're awesome.